Hi, welcome back to the AutoCAD 3D Simple Architectural Space tutorials. What I'm going to do this time is demonstrate creating the model in Crude Solids and then more refined solids. So I'm using a file called test space start crude solid. Okay, let's spin it over and see what we've got. So the basic start off is pretty similar. I've copied the section into position, and I've already set the UCS to be the front coordinate system, and I have traced over the shape of the roof on layer 3 roof fascia. So I'm going to make that the current layer. Okay. Now what I need to do is get the profile of the roof in the right position. It's too far in on the plan at the moment. So we'll put the world coordinate system back into effect and then draw a polyline. So I want a polyline from here out. Okay, and I'll trim that off. Using this line to chop it. Okay, so that's the distance that the roof shape needs to be moved outwards. So we'll move that out the way. Okay, so it's sitting directly above this pale blue line. Okay, now we can extrude that by the overall length of the roof to pick this point or this point. Okay, so that's fully covering the model. Okay, now I've already traced over the shapes of the walls. So let's change to a walls layer, or on a walls layer. Let's change to the walls layer and then extrude these up so they're at least this height. They want to go, to the top of the roof, I would say. Okay, so we'll extrude both of these objects, return to the height of the roof. Okay, so I know they definitely kind of collide with the roof. So just shade that, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so everything above this line really needs to be deleted. Okay, what I'm going to do is subtract from these white objects, I'm going to subtract the green. But if I do that, I will lose the roof. So we copy it first. Copy, pick a point, pretend to move away, come back to the same point, and then return. Then we want to subtract from these two shapes, return, pick the roof shape, return. So you can see it's chopped a slice all the way through the roofs. Okay, you can now use the separate command, click on the walls, return again, return again. These should now be separate and they can be deleted. If I shade now, we don't see any of the walls coming through the roof. Okay, the problem with this though is that this is one object. If I assign a material to it, it's going to cover all of the objects, so I don't have much control of in and out, but it's very fast. Let's have a look at the window instead. Let's change to a window frame layer, and I'll set the coordinate system to be the front again. Okay, so we'll trace over the overall shape of the window frame. So like I say, this is the crude version. This is very quick and crude. So we close the shape, and now extrude by the thickness of the window frame. Copy that onto the other mullion positions. Okay, now trace over the shape of the transoms. Extrude that right the way back through. We just let everything collide. Okay, copy that into position where that shape repeats. Okay, we've got a larger one here, so we've got a rectangle on that one, and there's a stranger shape at the top. There's this quadrilateral at the top. Close the shape, remember. Then extrude both of those two shapes. Okay, take it to the full depth of the window. Okay, now don't leave that as separate bits. You can join them all together, and that will tidy up all the junctions very quickly. So just pick all those shapes and watch what happens to the junctions. You'll see them all become much cleaner. So the solid becomes one united entity. Okay, so the door would be done the same as it was in the previous model. Light shelf, glass, everything else the same. The roof is the tricky part. We've got the same homogeneous material all the way around. If I'm wanting to keep this as a solid, then there's not much really else I can do. So I'm going to bring back on all the layers. I've got quite a few layers here frozen off. Okay, and any 2D layers, we could just lose those. Lost my walls there. Okay, so you see how much quicker it was to create? You see the flickering there? That indicates objects sharing the same 3D space. But generally the model does look the same. Now let's compare that to a more refined one. Let's have a look at a refined version instead. So starting off in the same kind of methodology. Okay, what I've done here, I've already got the roof plane modeled, and I've already taken the combined solid for the windows. So let's have a look at this windows object first. Now remember in the model that had the 3D faces, the window had three components to it: an internal frame, the kind of seal strip in the windows, and then the external frame. We can do that relatively easy by using a slicing object. Okay, so this object here is two boxes with a gap between them. If I subtract this object from our windows, it will leave the strip which we put onto the window frame seal layer. So see what happens there. Subtract from this object, return, we're taking away this object. Okay, so notice that's just a very thin, it's a very thin solid. Put that onto the window frame seal layer. Okay, this time it's the inverse. So we're taking away this shape from this. I could actually put it onto it, but I've got a slicer here instead. We could actually use a copy of this to slice a gap into here. Okay, I've got a thinner slicer instead. So we subtract from the window, return, pick the slicing object, and so it creates a gap between the two. So there's airspace between the two. If I zoom in, it's a bit jumpy, but you can kind of get the idea. There's a gap between those two objects. Okay, so if I change to the window frame internal layer and then separate, it should leave one of them orange and one green. And as I expected, it's done it the inverse of the one I wanted. So we just need to swap the layers around for these. A couple of returns there. Put that onto the external window frame. Put that onto the internal window frame. And what should happen is that this fits in between the two. So we'll move, pick up this object, endpoint, and it should fit in between the two. So we've got the same looking end result, but it's made from solids instead of 3D faces. So that kind of multi-layered window is still doable, but this time it's in solids. So we'll move those three now, and we can just place those straight onto the model. Okay, the walls slightly differently. You can see here I've got two sets of polylines. I've got a closed polyline for the outer wall and a closed polyline for the inner wall. And just as before, we extrude these, so they should stay on their own layer. As long as I don't combine two objects, then they should stay on their own layer. So I'll extrude those first. They're jumping to the current layer. That's what I'll do. I'll make this the current layer, then extrude, make the red the current layer and extrude those. And then we want to subtract just as we did before, but this time we'll need two copies of the roof. Okay, because we'll need one for the purple and one for the red. So we copy the roof once, twice. Subtract from the red objects, return, pick the roof, return. Change layer to the purple, subtract from the purple, return, pick the roof, return. Okay, we've then got to do the separating again. We're just doing everything twice effectively. So we separate and then delete. Make the red the current layer, separate, a couple of returns, and then delete. So the model's getting the definition that we had in the 3D face model. So you can still see we've got control over inside and outside materials, but it's just a little bit trickier and a bit more care required in the setting up. The ceiling, however, is a bit trickier. I have the ceiling layer available. We've taken the region from the previous model. So what I'm going to do here is extrude this by a small amount. So extrude, change layer, I'll make that the current layer. Extrude the ceiling, let's say by 25 millimeters. Okay, I'm going to subtract this from the roof. So make a copy of it first. Find a convenient base point, pretend to move away, come back. Return to finish. Subtract from the roof object, return, pick the ceiling, return. If I shade that and look from the underside, we've got a different color ceiling to the rest of the roof. Now I think what I would do here to get a different material on the overall roof is to change to the roof top layer. I need the 3-point UCS on the roof. So origin, X direction, Y direction. Draw a rectangle on top. Okay, and then we want this to extrude just a nominal amount, but we'll offset it first. Offset by say 25 millimeters, so there's a bit of an overlap. We could change back to the world coordinate system if we wanted to. I'm moving this now. I'm just moving it up 25 millimeters. And I'm going to draw a line downwards 100 millimeters. Extrude the rectangle, return. Don't want it to go this direction, I want it to follow the 100 millimeter long line. So I want to use the path option, pick the line, and it takes it down. So we've just added a bit of definition to the roof there. So that's working quite well. Okay, and then the other layers are basically just frozen off just now. So I'll bring those back. And the end product is basically the same. Okay, so there's no right or wrong way, but if you're wanting a model that's primarily made of solids, then you do have to do a bit more work. You might actually subtract the green solid from the white, but remember we would copy it first because you lose the object when you do a subtract. Okay, the 2D information in there we would once again just obscure, and then rogue line, off it goes. Let's turn off the glass just so we can see inside, just temporarily. Okay, so we've got the floor, ceilings, light shelf, but everything there that you can see is a solid. Okay, hope that's been useful and you're able to apply this to your studio projects, and very good luck.